Hello everyone, it's me Dr. Shiji. In this video, I'm going to discuss about the rules and fallacies of categorical syllogism. What do you mean by syllogism? Syllogism is a deductive mediate inference in which the conclusion is inferred from two premises. It is divided into two, that is pure syllogism and mixed syllogism or conditional syllogism. Pure syllogism contains only same type of propositions, whereas mixed syllogism contains both categorical and conditional propositions. Categorical syllogism is a pure syllogism which contains categorical propositions only. Conditional syllogism divided into three, that is hypothetical syllogism, disjunctive syllogism and dilemma. Standard form of categorical syllogisms. Categorical syllogism contains only categorical propositions. In a categorical syllogism, there are three propositions, that is major premise, minor premise and conclusion. There are three terms which are used twice in the syllogism. They are major term, minor term and middle term. Minor term is the subject of the conclusion and it is represented by the letter S. Major term is the predicate of the conclusion and it is represented as P. Middle term is the term that occurs in both premises but not in the conclusion. The letter M stands for the middle term. Major premise contains the major term and the middle term. Minor premise contains the minor term and the middle term. Both minor and major term occurs in the conclusion. Rules and fallacies. Formal validity of categorical syllogism depends on certain conditions which are called the rules of syllogism. There are 6 basic rules that must satisfy by a valid syllogism. If a syllogism violates any one of these rules, it commits a mistake in a syllogistic reasoning. It is called fallacy of syllogism, which makes it invalid. The rules may be classified as follows: rules related to structure, rules related to distribution of terms, rules related to quality, and rules related to quantity. Let's check it out one by one. The first rule is related to structure. Rule number 1. A categorical syllogism must contain 3 and only 3 terms, that is major term, minor term and middle term, each of which is used twice in the same sense throughout the syllogism. That is number 1 rule. Violation of this rule leads to 2 types of fallacies. They are fallacy of 4 terms and fallacy of equivocation. Equivocation or ambiguous use of terms. Any syllogism that contains more than 3 terms, it commits the fallacy of 4 terms. For example, all crows are black, no cranes are white, therefore no crows are cranes. In this syllogism, there are 4 terms, that is crows, black, cranes and white. That's why it commits the fallacy of 4 terms. If a term is used in a different sense in the same syllogism, it commits the fallacy of equivocation or ambiguity. There are 3 types of fallacy of equivocation, that is fallacy of ambiguous major, fallacy of ambiguous minor and fallacy of ambiguous middle. First one is fallacy of ambiguous major. If the major term is used in one sense in the major premise and different sense in the conclusion, then it commits the fallacy of ambiguous major. For example, light is essential to guide our step. Lead is not essential to guide our steps. Therefore, lead is not light. So, in this syllogism, lead is not light. That is a conclusion, right? So, light is the major term. That is the predicate place, right? So, light is the major term. So that's why in that syllogism, light is different sensibly it is used. So here the meaning of the major term light in the conclusion is heavy and in the major premise as brightness. So that's why it commits a fallacy of ambiguous major. Fallacy of ambiguous minor. If the minor term is used in different senses in the minor premise and conclusion, then it commits the fallacy of ambiguous minor. For example, no man is made of paper. All pages are men, therefore no pages are made of paper. Here the meaning of the minor term pages in the conclusion as sight of paper and in the minor premise as paper boy. So in different senses that minor term used. That's why it commits a fallacy of ambiguous minor. And fallacy of ambiguous middle. If the middle term is used in a different senses in the premises, then it commits the fallacy of ambiguous middle. For example, light is essential to guide our steps. Lead is not light. Therefore, lead is not essential to guide our steps. Here, the meaning of the middle term light in the minor premise as heavy and in the major premise as brightness. So, in two different senses, that middle term light has to be used. So, that's why it commits the fallacy of ambiguous middle. The following two rules are related to the distribution of terms. Rule number 2 and rule number 3. Okay, so rule number 2. In a valid categorical syllogism, middle term must be distributed at least in one premise. The middle term must be distributed at least in one premise. Violation of this rule leads to the fallacy of undistributed middle. If the rule is violated, then it commit the fallacy called fallacy of undistributed middle. Okay, so for example, all crows have wings, all parrots have wings, therefore all parrots are crows. So here wings is the middle term, right? So both are a preposition. As we all know that in a preposition the predicate will not distribute. So that's why wings is in the place of predicate. So that term, the middle term, is not at all distributed, right? So that's why it will violate this rule. So it will commit the fallacy called fallacy of undistributed middle. Rule number 3. In a valid categorical syllogism, a term which is distributed in the conclusion must be distributed in the concerned premise. That means if the major term is distributed in the conclusion, it should be distributed in the major premise. If the minor term is distributed in the conclusion, it should be distributed in the minor premise. Okay, so if the syllogism violates this rule, then it commits a fallacy of illicit process. It is of two types, that is fallacy of illicit major and fallacy of illicit minor. Number 1, fallacy of illicit major. If the major term is distributed in the conclusion and is undistributed in the major premise, then it commits the fallacy of illicit major. For example, all boys are mortal. No boys are girls. Therefore, no girls are mortal. So here, the major term mortal is distributed in the conclusion and is undistributed in the major premise. Second one is fallacy of illicit minor. If the minor term is distributed in the conclusion and is undistributed in the minor premise, then it commits the fallacy of illicit minor. For example, no Gandhians are communists. All Gandhians are vegetarians, therefore no vegetarians are communists. Here the minor term vegetarians is distributed in the conclusion and is undistributed in the minor premise. So that's why it commits the fallacy of illicit minor. The following two rules, that is 3 and 4, are related to the quality of a preposition. Okay, it's not 3 and 4, 4 and 5. So the following two rules are related to the quality of preposition. So in rule number 4, from two negative premises, no valid conclusion is possible. From two negative premises, no valid conclusion is possible. Violation of this rule leads to the fallacy of two negatives or the fallacy of exclusive premises. For example, no men are perfect, no men are immortal, therefore no immortal beings are perfect. So here, both the premises are negative. So we cannot infer a valid conclusion from two negative premises. Rule number 5. If one premise is negative, then the conclusion must be negative. Okay, that is rule number 5. One of the premises is negative, the conclusion should be negative. The following rule is related to the quantity of preposition. Rule number 6. Quantity of prepositions. From two universal premises, no particular conclusion is possible. That is, a syllogism having two universal premises must have a universal conclusion. Violation of this rule leads to existential fallacy. Okay, rule number 6. Violation of rule number 6 leads to the fallacy called existential fallacy. For example, all foxes are mammals. All mammals are animals. Therefore, some animals are foxes. That is actually a wrong conclusion. It's not at all a valid syllogism. Okay, so rule number 6. Violation of that rule leads to the fallacy called existential fallacy. And some corollary rules also is there. These are the 6 basic rules. Okay, so 3 more rules are there. Number 7. From two particular premises, there is no valid conclusion. From two particular premises, as like negative. From two negative premises, there is no valid conclusion. Same like the same. From two particular premises, there is no valid conclusion. Number 8, if one premise is particular, then the conclusion must be particular. As we all know that if one of the premises is negative, then conclusion also negative, like the same. So if one premise is particular, then the conclusion must be particular. Number 9, if the major premise is particular and the minor premise is negative, no valid conclusion is possible. If the major premise is particular and the minor premise is negative, no valid conclusion is possible. So these are the 6 basic plus 3, that is 9 rules of categorical syllogisms and their fallacies. Okay, thank you so much. See you soon with a new topic.